I want you to picture something in your mind right now.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Close your eyes if you can, and imagine you're walking through a stunning, sun-drenched Renaissance city.
Oh, nice.
Right? You're wandering down these wide, beautiful cobblestone streets, and you're looking around at these perfectly polished, incredibly modern buildings. The architecture is breathtaking.
Like it feels deeply intentional. Very new.
Exactly. It feels totally new. But then you step a little closer to one of these beautiful, smooth walls. You reach out, you run your hand along the stone, and you notice something strange.
It just...
Every single brick, like every marble column, every piece of this pristine new structure is actually scavenged material.
Oh, what?
Yeah. It is entirely built from the shattered, eroded rubble of a colossal, collapsed ancient ruin.
It's such a striking image to start with.
It really is. You're looking at a fresh, brilliant design, but it's literally constructed from the bones of a fallen empire.
Right, because from a distance, the illusion is perfect.
Totally perfect.
You think you're looking at a completely fresh architectural blueprint. But the reality is, you're looking at the ultimate survival mechanism.
Like a massive recycling project.
Exactly. The old world hasn't vanished at all. Its foundational pieces have just been, repurposed, sanded down, and shoved into new positions just to keep the modern roof from caving in.
And, well, the reason we're starting with this is that it isn't just physical architecture that works this way.
Right.
That image of the scavenged city is the perfect metaphor for what we're exploring today in this deep dive.
We're looking at a linguistic blueprint.
Yes. Specifically, how modern Italian isn't really a new language at all.
Not at all.
It's literally built from the scavenged bricks of classical Latin. The grammatical structures, the strange exceptions, the weird quirks of Italian, they're all just the architectural repurposing of a massive linguistic collapse.
Which honestly completely changes how you look at learning a language.
Oh, 100%.
Because if you've ever tried to learn a Romance language, Italian in particular, you've inevitably hit that wall of sheer frustration.
Yes. You're sitting there with a textbook staring at a verb conjugation or a plural noun that makes absolutely zero sense.
And you just want to scream, like, why are there so many exceptions?
Why is this language actively trying to trick me?
Right. It feels hostile.
It really does. It feels like whoever designed the language just threw a bunch of random, chaotic rules into a blender, specifically to make it impossible for you to order a coffee without sounding foolish.
But the thing is, those grammatical exceptions and irregularities, they aren't random mistakes.
They aren't flaws in the design.
No, they're perfectly preserved historical solutions to structural collapses in Latin.
They're the emergency load-bearing pillars.
Exactly. The speakers of the time constructed them to keep their ability to communicate alive when the old systems began to rot and fall apart.
So, if you're listening right now, whether you're a linguist, a history buff, or just someone who marvels at how complex systems manage to adapt and survive, this exploration reveals the absolute blueprint of linguistic survival.
It really does.
But to understand how this Renaissance structure of Italian was built, we have to start at the demolition site.
We have to understand how the ancient Latin ruins actually fell apart in the first place.
Right. And the mechanism behind this collapse is something linguists call morphological erosion.
Morphological erosion. It sounds like a geographical event.
It kind of is in a way.
It is. It's the slow, relentless, century-over-century dropping of the ends of words.
Terminal syllable erosion.
Exactly. And to understand why this happened, you have to understand what classical Latin actually felt like to speak.
It was heavy.
Very heavy. It was an incredibly dense, heavily engineered language. It relied entirely on a strict, rigid case system.
Okay, so a case system being a structure where the function of a word in a sentence is dictated by how the word ends?
That's the core of it, yeah. The grammatical suffixes did all the heavy lifting.
Right.
Classical Latin used endings like am, us, am, is.
And these weren't just decorative sounds.
Not at all. They were the instruction manuals for the words. You could arrange the words in a Latin sentence in almost any physical order you wanted.
Wait, really? Any order?
Pretty much. The verb could be at the beginning, the end, the middle, but as long as you had the correct suffix bolted onto the end of the noun, everyone listening knew exactly what that word was doing.
Okay, so let's unpack this. If I'm picturing this, it's like a literal heavy clay brick of a word. Let's use an example from the sources. The classical Latin word for wolf.
Perfect example.
So if the wolf is the direct object of the sentence, meaning someone is seeing the wolf or chasing the wolf, it's in the accusative case.
Right.
And the word is L-U-P-U-M, L-U-P-U-M.
Yeah, that at the end is the crucial piece of architecture.
It's waving a flag.
Exactly, waving a flag that says, hey, this wolf is receiving the action.
But then the erosion begins.
Because language lives in the streets.
Right. You have to imagine century after century of people talking in the streets, yelling across busy markets, whispering in taverns.
Thinking quickly.
Yeah, not bothering to enunciate perfectly. The physical wind and rain of daily human speech just battering away at that heavy brick.
People get lazy.
They do. The final M in LUPUM gets swallowed. It gets dropped.
And then, over a few more generations, that trailing U weakens.
So the heavy Latin suffix decays, and that rigid, heavy block of a word, LUPUM, transforms into the softer, more familiar modern Italian word we know today.
Lupo.
Lupo. That transformation is so profound.
It is, because it's not merely an accent changing over time. It isn't just people deciding to sound more melodic.
Right.
This single mechanical shift, dropping the physical end of the word because it takes too much breath to pronounce, it literally dismantled the entire Latin case system.
It destroyed the engine of the language.
Completely.
But how does the language survive that? I mean, if I think about this like a massive game of linguistic Jenga.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. You pull out that foundational block, the suffix, that is literally the instruction manual telling you what the word is doing. Doesn't the whole tower have to fall over?
You'd think so.
If all the nouns lose their specific distinct endings, how does the language even function? You just have a pile of nouns with no instructions. It sounds like total chaos.
It would have been chaos if the language hadn't reorganized itself in real time.
Wow.
Because the human need to communicate doesn't stop just because a suffix erodes.
Yeah.
Right? People still need to buy bread, they still need to tell stories, to argue.
So how do they solve the Jenga problem?
Through a massive systemic funneling effect. The language completely rebuilt the architecture of the modern noun.
Okay, walk me through this funneling effect, because
Yeah.
pouring chaos into a funnel usually just gives you, concentrated chaos.
Fair point. But think of the funnel as a great standardizer.
Okay.
Into the top of this massive historical funnel, you're pouring all the debris of the collapsing Latin system.
All those specific suffixes.
Dozens and dozens of very specific, highly nuanced Latin case endings. Nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative, all eroding away, losing their distinct final consonants, tumbling down into this linguistic bottleneck.
And what comes out the bottom?
Standardization. The language forces all of those diverse, broken endings to collapse into just three primary, standardized, modern singular noun endings.
So the chaos is streamlined.
Exactly. You're left with nouns ending almost exclusively in O, A, and E.
Which are the absolute classic foundational Italian endings.
Yep.
Like if you walk into an Italian 101 class on day one, you're taught that words end in OA or E.
And you are literally looking at the output of a centuries-long funneling process.
Mhm.
The vast majority of the modern Italian vocabulary emerged through this systemic loss.
The language sacrificed immense complexity at the end of the word for the sake of survival and speed.
Survival and speed, exactly.
But what happens to the words that don't fit through the funnel cleanly? Because the sources mention this fascinating phenomenon that occurs during this erosion process called parole tranche.
Truncated words.
Right, and this completely shifts how I visualize words eroding.
Parole tranche show us the internal physics of the language.
How so?
Because when a word eroded over the centuries, it didn't always just quietly lose its final letters and slip neatly into the funnel.
Okay.
Sometimes the internal pressure of the word, specifically the energy of the spoken accent, permanently shifted the architecture.
Let's use an example to ground this for the listener.
Okay, the Latin word for city.
Right, the original word is civitatem. So it's a long, heavy word.
Very heavy. It has that accusative M suffix at the very end.
And the erosion starts happening on the street level.
Yep, the M starts to fall away.
But as that physical M drops off, the stress of the speaker's voice, the spoken accent, refuses to shift backward.
It holds its ground.
Yeah.
It stays locked on what is suddenly becoming the final syllable of the word.
So civitatem begins to lose its tail, but the heavy accent stays locked on that T sound.
Exactly. People go from saying civitatem to something more like civitatem.
Civitatem.
Yes, the accent becomes a structural anchor.
Wow.
And over more time, the middle syllables of the word begin to compress and collapse under the weight of that final accent.
Until you're left with a vastly shortened word.
You're left with the modern Italian word for city, città.
Spelled C-I-T-T-A with the stark, heavy accent mark over that final A.
Right. Or look at the word for youth.
Oh yeah, in Latin it's a long, rolling word.
But in modern Italian, it compresses down to gioventù, ending with a hard accented U,
This is such a brilliant way to look at a language.
isn't it?
Whenever you're reading Italian and you see a word ending with an accented vowel, città, juventu, caffè, virtù, you're literally looking at a scar.
A structural scar.
You're looking at the amputation point where a heavy Latin ending was chopped off by centuries of fast-talking citizens.
And that accent mark is just a ghost syllable standing there holding the line, refusing to budge.
The physical material of the suffix, the actual letters, they're gone forever. But the phonetic energy of that suffix, the accent, remains locked in place.
The ghost still haunts the end of the word.
I love that. Okay, so the wrecking ball of erosion has swung. The suffixes are gone. The nouns have lost their physical endings. They've been funneled into simpler vowels or violently truncated.
The physical evidence is destroyed.
But did the underlying invisible logic of those cases completely vanish?
That is the pivotal question of linguistic evolution.
And the answer is
The answer is no.
no.
The physical bricks crumbled, but the invisible blueprint survived.
How?
It survived by hiding. This is the concept of syntactic fossils.
Syntactic fossils. Okay, here's where it says really interesting. Let's take the accusative case again.
The direct objects case.
Right. Our heavy Latin wolf, L-U-P-U-M. We know it lost its physical word ending. The eroded away into the funnel.
The word is now just lupo.
So how can a word act like an accusative object without looking like one anymore? If the instruction manual on the end of the word is gone, how do we know the invisible logic is still operating?
What's fascinating here is that we can see the ghost in the machine when we examine a very specific, incredibly rigid grammatical construction that survived the wrecking ball.
The syntactic fossil.
Yes, it's known as the accusative plus infinitive structure.
Break that down for us. What's the formula?
The formula goes like this. You begin with a perception verb, you follow it immediately with a direct object, and you cap it with an infinitive verb.
Okay, let's look at the mechanics of this. A perception verb. These are verbs where a subject is observing an action occurring.
Verbs like vedere, to see,
Sentire, to feel or to hear.
ascoltare, to listen.
So you start a sentence with your perception verb. I say.
Then you introduce your direct object.
Now, historically, in classical Latin, this object would be wearing that heavy accusative suffix.
It would be screaming, I am the thing being seen.
But in modern Italian, it doesn't have that suffix.
No, it just looks like a normal, funneled, everyday noun.
But the magic, the fossilized logic, happens with how that noun interacts with the third piece of the puzzle.
The infinitive verb.
The raw, unconjugated form of an action. To run, to jump, to eat.
Exactly. Let's put the whole structure together in a sentence. I see the wolf run.
In Italian, vedo il lupo correre.
Right. Vedo is the perception I see. Il lupo, the wolf, is the direct object of what I am seeing.
But il lupo is serving a dual purpose here, isn't it?
A massive dual purpose. It's the object being seen, yes, but it is simultaneously acting as the logical subject performing the action of that final infinitive verb, correre, to run.
Because I am not the one running.
Exactly. You're stationary, doing the seeing.
The wolf is the one doing the running, so the word wolf is caught in the middle. It's the object receiving my gaze, but the subject executing the run.
Now, in classical Latin, that complex dual relationship was mathematically solved by forcing the word for wolf into the accusative case. The physical ending handled the logic.
But today, the physical accusative case is dead and buried.
Dead and buried. The word lupo has absolutely no special suffix to tell the listener it's doing two jobs at once.
But the structure of the sentence.
Yes.
The rigid, unyielding placement of the noun squarely between the perception verb and the infinitive, that forces the word to behave exactly as it did 2,000 years ago.
It's acting like a mold. The original Latin structure is this ironclad mold, and even though we poured a slightly different, softer, eroded Italian word into it, the word is forced to take the exact same logical shape.
It performs the exact same function.
It is a syntactic fossil in the purest sense. The physical dinosaur is gone, its bones have turned to dust, but the footprint is perfectly preserved in the mud of the sentence structure.
It tells us something fundamental about how languages protect themselves, doesn't it?
It really does. A language will eagerly sacrifice its physical parts. It will drop syllables, it will lose heavy suffixes, just so people can speak faster in the streets.
But it will cement its word order to protect its logical operations. Word order became the new syntax.
The language shifted the burden of meaning.
And that shift of burden brings us to perhaps the most massive structural pivot in the entire evolution of the language.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if the accusative case survived by hiding in the rigidity of word order, how did the genitive case survive?
The genitive case.
Yeah, the case of possession and material, the case you use when you want to say the book of the teacher or a ring of gold. How did that survive losing its instruction manual?
By completely, radically shifting its weight. Linguists refer to this as the genitive pivot.
The genitive pivot, okay.
In classical Latin, relations of possession, material, and characteristic were encoded entirely at the back end of the noun, using specific suffixes like ai or ae.
I'm trying to visualize the physics of this shift for the listener.
Go for it.
Okay, imagine an antique, beautiful brass balancing scale. On the left side of the scale, sitting on the little brass plate, is a heavy, solid, rectangular stone block.
This block represents the Latin noun.
Right, and deeply etched into the very back edge of this stone block is the grammatical suffix, that aar or a.
So all the grammatical weight, all the meaning that conveys possession or material is hanging off the back edge of that block.
Now, morphological erosion begins. The wind and rain of daily speech start battering the block, and that suffix on the back edge starts to crumble away.
And if the back of the block crumbles away and disappears, the brass scale is going to violently tip.
The sentence is going to lose its balance. It won't make sense anymore. The relationship of possession is lost.
So what does the architecture of the language do?
It literally takes the weight off the crumbling back end of the block, and it plops a brand new solid weight right onto the front of the scale to keep it balanced.
And that new weight, sitting proudly in front of the noun, is the preposition di,
Di.
meaning of.
The mechanical elegance of that pivot is just astounding, because the grammatical weight had to go somewhere.
People still need to express ownership.
The human need to express this item belongs to me, or this tool is made of iron, didn't suddenly disappear just because the citizens of Rome started dropping the ends of their words. So the language organically shifted the entire burden from a suffix at the end of the word to a tiny preposition at the beginning of the word.
And the amount of heavy lifting that this tiny two-letter preposition, die, has to do is staggering.
It single-handedly took over the jobs of multiple complex Latin genitive endings.
It became the ultimate workhorse of the Italian language. First, it handles possession.
Give us an example.
Instead of applying a complex Latin suffix to the word teacher to say the teacher's book, modern Italian leans entirely on il libro di professore.
The book of the teacher.
Right. It also handles feature or characteristic.
Like if you want to describe a man of honor, un uomo di onore.
Exactly. And material.
A table of wood, un tavolo di legno. A ring of gold, un anello di oro.
All of these incredibly nuanced relationships that used to be elegantly and mathematically handled by different carved-out suffixes are now outsourced to this one preposition sitting firmly in front of the noun.
When you pull back and look at the whole system, this is a monumental shift in how the human brain processes the language.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it represents a fundamental structural shift in the language's core mechanics.
We've moved the engine from the back of the car to the front of the car.
Linguistically, it moved the language from being a synthetic system, where meaning is baked deeply into the internal machinery of a single word via suffixes, to an analytic system.
An analytic system relies on prepositions, on stringing separate, smaller words together to build meaning.
It's a completely different way of conceptualizing a sentence, brought on entirely by the fact that people were speaking too quickly and dropping their syllables.
It really is a panic survival mechanism that became permanent architecture.
Exactly.
The roof was caving in on the genitive case, so the speakers hastily shoved a little two-letter pillar called D underneath it, and the building stood strong for the next 2,000 years.
And this brings us to another area of the linguistic construction site.
Right, because we've spent a lot of time looking at nouns.
We've watched their endings erode, we've seen them funneled, we've seen them rely on fossils and new prepositions.
But what about verbs? When the surface eroded for verbs, they didn't just shift their weight around like the nouns did.
No, they did something much more dramatic.
Much more secretive. We're entering the realm of subterranean roots.
The phenomenon known as la restaurazione, the restoration.
This might be one of the most conceptually beautiful and simultaneously frustrating aspects of Italian morphology.
Frustrating for learners, definitely.
Well, yeah. Because when morphological erosion hit the infinitive verbs, the base, unconjugated forms of the verbs, it battered them so badly that it completely obscured their Latin origins.
On the surface, the modern Italian verb looks entirely disconnected from its ancient ancestor.
So what does this all mean for someone learning the language? I mean, if you've ever opened an Italian textbook, you've undoubtedly pulled your hair out over irregular verbs.
So you've all been there.
You spend weeks memorizing the clean mathematical rules for conjugating a regular verb, and then you hit a word like bear, which means to drink.
Right.
And when you go to conjugate it to say I drink, it's not bero.
No, it's bevo. B-E-V-O.
And you stare at the page thinking, where on earth did that V come from? There is no V in beer.
It feels as a prank.
Are these verbs just breaking the rules to be difficult?
The instinct is to view them as agents of chaos, but the reality is the exact opposite.
They aren't breaking rules.
These irregular verbs are actually the most fiercely loyal rule followers in the entire language. The trick is, they aren't following modern Renaissance rules.
They're loyally following ancient Latin rules.
Yes. Let's visualize how this works because it's like a magic trick.
Okay, lay it out.
Imagine a cross-section of the earth. Above the surface, sticking out of the grass, you see these modern, somewhat broken, eroded, blue Italian pillars.
Those are the modern infinitive verbs like beer. They're short, they're worn down by the weather.
But beneath the surface of the ground, connected to the base of those small blue pillars, are these massive, ancient, intricate root systems carved out of solid Roman stone.
That buried root system is the original Latin architecture.
Exactly. When an Italian speaker goes to conjugate one of these heavily eroded verbs in daily conversation, they don't look at the broken blue pillar on the surface.
The language opens a trapdoor, reaches deep down into the dirt, and pulls the conjugation straight out of the buried Latin root.
It's an incredible bypass system.
Let's trace the roots of beer, to drink.
Okay, on the surface, a short, eroded little word.
But its buried Latin root is bibere, B-I-B-E-R-E.
So when you conjugate it in Italian, the language bypasses the surface word bear entirely, caps into the deep roots of biber, and that is where you get conjugations like bevo or beveva.
The V is just the phonetic softening of the ancient Latin B.
It's pulling from the foundation.
It is la restaurazione, the restoration. The erosion only managed to damage the infinitive form, the name of the verb itself.
But the conjugated forms, I drink, he drank, we will drink, they were used so frequently in daily life that they actively resisted the erosion.
They held their shape.
Look at the verb for to say.
On the surface, it's a tiny four-letter word, dire, D-I-R-E.
But you open the trap door, and its buried Latin root is dicer.
So when you say I say in modern Italian, you don't use dire, you pull from the root and say dico.
The hard C from the ancient Latin root suddenly rises up from beneath the topsoil to anchor the modern word.
And the verb fare, to do or to make.
The Latin root is facere.
So when you say I do, you say faccio.
It restores the lost architecture perfectly. This is why language learners need a perspective shift.
It's so true. Every time you conjugate an irregular Italian verb, you aren't failing to follow a modern rule.
You're literally speaking classical Latin for a split second. You're restoring the ruined foundation.
You aren't breaking a rule, you're honoring an ancient one. It gives the language such a sense of vertigo.
It really does.
You realize you're just walking on the modern topsoil, ordering a coffee or asking for directions, but there is a massive archaeological dig happening right beneath your tongue every time you open your mouth.
And speaking of colossal structures that collapsed and left ruins scattered across the language, we have to address the most dramatic architectural failure of the transition from Latin to Italian.
Oh, the phantom gender.
Yes, because it wasn't just words and suffixes that caved in. There was an entire, massive, foundational category of grammar that completely shattered.
The neuter gender.
The ghost that haunts modern Italian plurals.
To understand the chaos this caused, we have to establish the baseline of the ancient world. Classical Latin was supported by three massive grammatical genders.
Masculine, feminine, and neuter.
Right, think of them as three distinct, massive pillars holding up the temple of the language. Every noun was assigned to one of these three pillars.
But as Latin slowly evolved and eroded into modern Italian, the speakers began to streamline this complex system.
They instinctively decided that managing three separate genders was a crowd. It was inefficient.
So the language violently compressed itself into a binary system, just masculine and feminine.
So if we go back to our visual of the Grand Temple facade with those three pillars, masculine on the left, feminine in the middle, neuter on the right.
Okay.
During the centuries-long transition to Italian, the neuter pillar completely shatters. It crumbles to dust.
But the pieces of that shattered pillar, specifically the physical letters that made up the neuter grammatical endings, predominantly the AA ending used for neuter plurals, they don't just vanish into thin air.
They can't. In linguistics, much like in physics, matter cannot be truly destroyed, it just changes form.
The phonetic rubble has to go somewhere. It has to be absorbed by the surviving structures.
The rubble of the neuter pillar tumbles over and physically attaches itself to the base of the feminine archway.
The feminine gender absorbs the physical remnants, the A endings, of the dead neuter gender.
But this raises an important question. How does a language actually absorb a dead gender in practice?
Yeah, what does that sound like when thousands of people are actually speaking in the piazza?
It results in a phenomenon that baffles modern learners. Gender-shifting plurals.
Words that literally change their gender the moment you have more than one of them.
Exactly, because some very common words in Italian started their historical life as masculine words when they were singular.
But when you make them plural, they reach back into the historical rubble. They adopt that old neuter ad ending.
And because modern Italian doesn't have a neuter category anymore, the language's internal logic looks at that ad ending and says, well, a usually means feminine in our new binary system.
So this plural must be feminine now.
It is a grammatical identity crisis brought on by historical scavenging.
It totally is.
The examples of this are so common in everyday Italian life, you would never guess how strange they actually are historically. Let's start with a kitchen staple.
An egg.
Yes, an egg. The singular word for egg is uovo. It ends in an O. It's a standard masculine word. Il uovo.
But if you're making a large omelet and you need multiple eggs, you don't just change the O to an I like a normal, well-behaved masculine plural.
You don't say uvi.
No, you say uva. You add that A from the neuter rubble.
And suddenly, those eggs have crossed gender lines. They are feminine, the uova. The masculine egg becomes feminine eggs.
It happens with the concept of pairs, too. The word for a pair is peo. Singular, masculine.
But if you have multiple pairs of shoes, you have paia. Feminine.
It happens with measurements of distance, too. A mile is midlio, masculine.
Yeah.
But if you walk 5 miles, you walk 5 milia, feminine.
And with large numbers, 100 is centenaio, masculine, but hundreds of people are centenaia, feminine.
It's wild to think about. It is as if the ghost of the dead neuter gender possesses the word the moment it multiplies.
And because modern speakers don't have a neuter box to put it in, they just shove it into the feminine box because the ending roughly matches.
It's a completely pragmatic, duct tape solution to a massive structural collapse.
It is a duct tape solution, yes, but that duct tape eventually evolved into a feature rather than a bug.
Oh, absolutely.
Because this absorption of the neuter A ending didn't just create quirky, confusing gender swaps. It actually handed modern Italian a profound linguistic superpower.
The superpower of the semantic split, the shape-shifting plurals.
Yes. The survival of that neuter allowed modern Italian to retain a level of incredible conceptual nuance by splitting certain words into 2 entirely different plurals.
Several masculine base nouns evolved to have not 1, but 2 separate plural forms, and you choose which one to use based on the physical reality of the object you're describing.
Wait, so depending on which plural ending I decide to use, I am completely changing the physical nature of the objects I'm talking about.
It's a mesmerizing feature. One plural uses the standard, expected masculine I ending. The other plural uses that ghostly absorbed feminine I ending derived from the neuter.
And the dividing line between them is the concept of unity versus individuality.
Exactly.
Explain that line. How does an ending convey unity?
Well, the feminine, a plural, the one carrying the ghost of the ancient neuter, that's reserved to describe a collective or an organic unit.
Things that naturally belong together, functioning as a single, cohesive, living whole.
Yes, so the A ending implies a collective, organic, connected unit.
Conversely, the standard masculine I plural is used to describe individual, disconnected, or metaphorical objects. Things that share a name but act completely independently of one another.
We have to walk through the examples of this because this is where the mechanics of the language become pure poetry.
Let's start with the base word braccio, meaning arm. Singular, masculine, braccio.
If you want to talk about human arms, the biological arms attached to your body, functioning together as part of your organic form, you use the ghostly feminine, a plural, la braccia.
It implies the collective organic unit of a person's limbs. Picture a mother's arms wrapping a child in a hug. Those are braccia.
But if you're walking past a construction site and you're looking up at the mechanical arms of a steel crane, or if you're in a furniture shop looking at the wooden arms of a chair, they are disconnected.
They're individual, separate, metaphorical arms.
For those, you use the standard masculine AE plural, I bracci.
Wow! Braccia implies blood and bone and muscle working in unison. Braccia implies cold, separate, mechanical components.
Let's look at another biological example. Dito, meaning finger.
Following the logic of the split, if I'm talking about the fingers on my hand moving together fluidly to play a chord on a piano or grip a cup of coffee, they're a collective organic unit.
So you use the ghostly feminine o dita.
Exactly. The unit is the hand. The fingers are organically bound to it.
But if you're talking about pointing fingers viewed completely separately, or perhaps the metaphorical fingers of a mechanical sorting machine.
You'd use the masculine I biti.
Right. The next example is incredibly visceral. The word is osso, meaning bone.
So imagine an archaeologist dusting away dirt and uncovering an articulated skeleton in a tomb. A rib cage perfectly connected to a spine, an organic unit that used to house a living, breathing person.
They're looking at la ossa, the feminine, o plural, a cohesive, connected unit.
But if you go to the butcher shop down the street and ask for a bag of disconnected, scattered, random bones to take home and give to your dog.
Those are no longer a collective organic unit. They're individual, completely separate items.
So you use the masculine plural, yossi.
Ossa is a skeleton. Ossi is dog food.
That's amazing. The ending of the word alone literally tells you whether the bones are physically connected to each other or not.
It's a brilliantly efficient way to pack profound visual and conceptual information into a single vowel shift.
And it extends beyond just physical body parts to abstract concepts too, right?
Oh, yeah. Consider the word fondamento, meaning foundation.
If you're talking about the literal physical foundation of the collective stones and cement holding up a house, that's an organic, connected unit of architecture.
So you use the feminine le fondamento.
But if you're sitting in a university lecture hall and you're discussing the metaphorical individual principles of a theory or a concept, the foundations of modern philosophy or the foundations of mathematics.
Those are distinct, separate intellectual ideas. So you use the masculine, the I fondamenti.
Le fondamenta hold up your physical house. I fondamenti hold up your PhD thesis.
I find this incredibly poignant. The neuter gender died. The massive pillar collapsed. But its ghost, that specific ending, survived, specifically to become the linguistic marker for things that are organically connected.
It became the vowel of a living whole. It's as if the language refused to let go of its ability to describe unity, even as its own systems were breaking apart.
It perfectly encapsulates the entire thesis of this exploration.
It really does.
When we look at this evolution from Latin to Italian, we are not looking at a language degrading or getting lazier or breaking down into nonsense.
We're looking at a masterclass in adaptation.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the synthesis of everything we've uncovered today. The blueprint of linguistic survival. Think about the massive journey the language took through this filter of time and human use.
We saw the heavy, rigid Latin accusative case hit the filter of morphological erosion, and what came out the other side?
We got standardized noun endings. We got truncated words bearing the proud, accented scars of their past. And we got syntactic fossils that locked meaning permanently into structure, sacrificing the endings of words to save the logic of the thought.
We saw the Latin genitive case hit the filter of syntactic replacement, actively shifting the heavy burden of expressing possession and material away from those crumbling back-end suffixes.
And placing it entirely on the absolute structural dominance of the little preposition die.
And finally, we watched the entire Latin neuter gender undergo a total system collapse.
But instead of vanishing into the ether, it hit the filter of absorption, giving us those mind-bending semantic double plurals, where a single vowel tells you if a noun is a living whole or a scattered part.
The ultimate takeaway from peeling back all these layers is that Italian is not just a simplified or degraded form of Latin.
No.
It is Latin beautifully, strategically, and necessarily repurposed for survival.
Every grammatical exception that frustrates a modern learner, every irregular verb, every gender-shifting noun, is in fact a perfectly preserved historical solution to a structural crisis.
It is the Renaissance city, built from the ancient ruins. The old stones are still there, they're just holding up new roofs.
Which leaves me with a final provocative thought for you to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah, I love this part.
If modern Italian is just the repurposed ruins of an ancient language, shaped purely by the mechanical erosion of millions of people speaking quickly in the streets over centuries.
What vital parts of the language you're speaking right now are currently eroding away without you even noticing?
Exactly. And what invisible subterranean logic will future speakers rely on centuries from now to understand the grammatical ruins we leave behind?
The erosion never stops. The building never finishes.
Thank you for joining us on this structural tour of the language. Keep listening, keep questioning the systems around you, and we will see you on the next deep dive.
The old stone crumbles down, lost endings in the river sound. Lupus forgets his Latin form, a new tongue keeps the feeling warm, and now the many become one. Braccio osso dito in the sun, a neuter ghost inside the noun. Ossa and dita all around, it's how the family tree has grown, from ancient seed to modern home.